on, guys? It's Surfcast in the Island, and today I'm going to be talking about the tale of two fish and my biggest striped bass ever caught. The reason why I say two fish is because I'll be talking about the one that got away. That was probably going to be my biggest fish I caught in the surf, and the one I actually ended up landing, which is in this picture right here towards the end of October. We waited on the boga, pretty much bottomed out at 40 pounds. It may not be the biggest fish throughout my life of surf casting, but it taught me a great deal about bait behavior and how fish move and how these bigger fish will roam around more likely in that slack water. So neither here nor there. I would say this was around mid-October of last year, and it was a very productive fall nonetheless, as well as the spring, but I feel like the fall was much better if I talked to more and more people. And I was out there one day with my buddy Devin Cohen. I believe it was either a Saturday or Sunday, and we were just picking away at the fish. It was, schoolie bass. We had the bluefish. We had an occasional, adult bluefish mixed in with the cocktails as well. Tons of bait, bunker up and down the beach. Whales on them, seals on them, dolphins on them. We had a real mix of life that day. And between the two of us, I believe my dad may have been with me that day as well. We probably had about 24 fish between the three of us, I would say. And I knew for a fact that we, if I was able to get back out there at night, could have a shot at, one, two, maybe three decent sized fish. And when I say decent size, I don't mean, these 24-inch, 25-inch schoolies that guys run up and down the beach about. I'm talking about fish in the 20, 30, and 40-pound class. So left the beach around noon, 1 o'clock, and I asked Devin, you want to come back later? I think we have a good shot at some big fish. Whether it was, preparing for school the next day or whatever, or whatnot, or job interview or family obligations, he couldn't, which is understandable. I give him respect for that. But I reached out to a couple other friends, and I believe that Frank Boney joined me that night. And we got there around 5, 6 o'clock before it was getting dark. And I pretty much went over the deal, what was going on earlier in the day, in terms of the amount of bait I saw between the bunker and all the other aquatic life that I saw. He's like, all right, let's give it a shot. So we started towards the point of the inlet. We were fishing at southwestern Nassau Beach. And no one was really doing anything. Bunch of guys stacked up at the tip of the jetty, maybe one or two teen-sized fish came up. And I told them, listen, let's fish the back cut towards the ball field, because there's a spot back there that I know. I'm not going to give it away. And he's like, okay, let's give it a shot in your back cut. So we went back at about this time. Since we walked it, it was getting a little darker now. And I would say around 7:30 is where we had the first hit, and it was my fish. And at first I thought I was stuck on the bottom, because the cast right before that I got hung up in a mussel bed and I snapped off. But this one I go and I set the hook and I go to pull up, and I'm like, I'm stuck for sure. But sure enough, the rod doubles over and it starts pumping. I'm like, Frank, this is a good fish. You're going to have to help me. So at this time, 7:30, 8 o'clock, it's dark during the fall, so you can't really see. So I'm playing the fish, playing it. I get it in, I see it right in the wash. I try to go leader it, and it shakes off. And I was pissed. Losing a fish that big, it takes a lot of confidence out of you. And yeah, it's a big mental thing when you lose a fish that big that could potentially be your personal best. And after that cast, I inspect my gear, and sure as day, the bucktail was straightened out. And I'll show you the bucktail right now. It's this one right here. I was using a 1 1/4 ounce Andros ball-headed jig. And you can see there, this is the exact bucktail that it's straightened out. And I knew from that point on I had to use bigger tackle instead of making excuses why I would lose fish, why I would pull the hook using lighter tackle or inadequate gear. So I'd say about 10-15 minutes goes by, and Frank hooks up now. Now I believe that my fish is probably in the 30-pound class, but it probably took about 150 yard run, and took him underneath a mussel bed. So I told him to back down on the drag. He backed down on the drag. He played the fish right and everything. We probably got it about 3/4 of the way in, and it snapped him off. That one, it was probably closer to 40 pounds. I've seen a lot of fish and how they fight. I could tell you it was a bigger fish like mine. And from that day on, I've just been motivated to use bigger tackle. And ever since that night, it's haunted me in terms of I'll never know how big that fish was. Per se, I mean, I saw a glimpse of it, but I didn't get measurements. I didn't get a weight and whatnot. So I told my buddy Pino about it. And he's like, yeah, the big fish should start moving in since we're coming up on the moon of October. And pretty much from that day on, for almost a week straight, I fished every morning and every night because I wasn't working at the time. I was unemployed. I just got off my job. And, I fished every day, every single day. And, I did well, caught fish here and there, but other days you get the skunk. And, but nothing big, and I was kind of puzzled by that. So I believe this is a Monday of the next week, and or the week after, either or, it doesn't really matter. But for whatever reason, I didn't fish that morning, and Pino, I get a text from Pino around 10 a.m. because I woke up late, and he said the bass moved in again, some bigger fish between the 20 and 40 pound class. And again, I was pissed. It just goes to show you got to be out there all the time because you don't know when it's going to happen. It could happen, today, it could happen tomorrow, it could happen in an hour, it could happen from a week from now. So it's taught me any chance you have to be out there, you really have to put your time in because, like I said, you don't know when it's going to happen, when those big fish are going to move through. It's more of a hit and go thing. It's not going to be like they stick around like these small fish. They're always keeping their head up and looking for the bait down the beach. They're much more sensitive to water temperature change and where the bait is because it's the fall run. It's the migration. They have to stage up in areas where they're going to be, most protected and safe, like the Hudson and so on and the Chesapeake. But neither here nor there. I believe it was another Monday. Yeah, so now it was the week after this Monday now. I show up to the beach and we're fishing. Perfect conditions. I knew if there were going to be big fish around, it was going to happen today. It was 3 days off the moon in October with nor'easterly winds. And if anyone knows about meteorology and what a northeast wind does to fishing, it causes a drop in the barometric pressure. And it really gets the fish into feeding mode because they like that low pressure front coming through as opposed to high pressure fronts because they tend to get groggy and they don't feed. It's the best way I can explain it is like, say if I know a storm's coming and we're going to be locked down in the house for a long time, I'm going to go to the store and get a lot of groceries and come home so I know I'm safe and sheltered in terms of food and whatnot. Fish think the same way. In terms of they don't use logic, but they could just feel it. So I'm fishing the tip of the jetty next to my buddy Lou and my buddy Pino, and there's just fish blitzing everywhere. Big bass. I believe they're keening on peanut bunker, but we couldn't get a hit. I was throwing bucktails, they wouldn't hit it. Very few guys were hooking up. You would have the occasional guy catching one. But, it was slow in the beginning, regardless of the fact that you had bass busting everywhere on these peanuts. And I'm thinking to myself, it's either going to happen today or I'm done for the season. So I throw a plug. I think it was a Tsunami Talking Popper. And I had one swirl on it. And that was about it. I had one hit on the plug that followed me up, and that was it. and the tide's dropping and dropping, so I'm starting to lose confidence. There's less and less water there. So for whatever reason, my buddy he jumps down. My buddy Pino jumps down into the jetty, and you could walk at low water pretty much in front of the sand and in front of the rocks. So he gets one right away, and we're almost at the bottom of the tide. So I'm like, all right, well, one's a fluke. He pulls a second one, about 20 pounds in the 20-pound class. So I'm like, all right, that's a pattern. So I hopped out with my buddy Lou, and first cast with a 1.25 ounce bucktail, I slammed one. It was probably a mid to high teen fish. I threw that one back. I had another one, same thing, probably closer to 20, low 20s. And man, like, it's not like fighting these schoolies. You get a teen size 20-pound fish at least. It's going to fight you for about, I don't know, 5 minutes, maybe a little less than that current. It depends on how fast the sweep is. And then I could remember I made another cast, and about 10 minutes later, I had a hit. I had one hooked up, and I dropped them. But in my eyes, I believe I was supposed to drop that fish because this is what led to catching this one right here. For whatever reason, I asked my buddy Lou, and I'm like, oh, what do you think about an SP minnow in the shallow water? He's like, oh, I don't know. Like, I've had luck on it, 20 to 25-pound class fish at most. You give it a shot, though. I don't know if you'll get a big one. I'm like, all right, I'll change it and give it a shot. So I tie on an SP minnow, and I send it out there. And not too long after that cast, probably about 2, 3, 4 cranks into the retrieve, I set up on what is my biggest striped bass. And I knew it was a good fish. It felt a lot like the fish I hooked into about 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago, when I was fishing at night. And I just said to myself, please just let me see this fish. I knew it was a good fish. It was running, it was screaming drag. And it was about 10 minutes later I landed it. And I didn't trust it until I had almost hit more than half of its body out of water. And I looked down at the thing, and I was just astounded. I've never seen a bass this big local in my life. It was all of 48 inches. I went to go gill it, and when I lifted it up out of the water, the tail was still on the ground. It was massive, and when I went to go lean back, I was actually a little off balance, and from that point on, I knew it was going to be, it was very special. It was a special moment. I've never had a striper that big. And, I could remember after getting that fish, I just stopped and, watched everyone else. I was just in shock and awe. I know other guys on the beach have caught in, high 40s, mid 40s. But, it was a big milestone for me. We waited on the boga, bottomed out at around 40 pounds. And it was just a very big achievement. I hope there's many more to come. For a lot of people, that's a fish like once in a lifetime, but I want to try to make this a consistent basis in terms of targeting these fish around the moon and calculating it correctly. But that's about it. That's my story about my biggest striped bass I've ever caught. And the funny thing is, my biggest bass I've ever caught is bigger than the biggest one I've ever had on the boat. So it goes to show you, you don't need a boat to catch big fish if you know what you're doing. Again, I don't know everything. I'm still learning, but I've definitely progressed throughout this past year. And this past spring and fall, I believe, has made me a better fisherman, much more aware of what's going on, what I'm using, where am I going to fish, and why. So this pretty much concludes this discussion. I hope you guys enjoyed my story in terms of my personal experience with the big fish. If you could please like, comment, and hit that subscribe button, I would greatly appreciate that. Thank you, and have a nice day.